the Ox Potato Specialist, Hennig.
The heartbreaking end of Mr. Perfect's father was all about family pain. First came the injuries that slowed him down, then the devastating loss of his son. That alone was enough to break anyone. But sadly, it didn't stop there. His own health started to decline, and eventually it took his life. Honestly, it doesn't get more tragic than that. The downfall of Larry Hennig didn't happen all at once. It was a slow, painful journey that began with something every wrestler dreads: an injury. It all started during a match with Johnny Powers, where Larry suffered a serious knee injury. At first, it seemed like something he could bounce back from, but it stuck with him. That knee never quite healed, and it ended up haunting him for the rest of his life. On top of that, his neck started giving him trouble too. By 1978, the wear and tear had become too much, and Larry made the tough decision to step away from full-time wrestling. He did come back for a few matches now and then, but the glory days were clearly behind him. But as hard as it was to say goodbye to the ring, what came next was far more painful than anything Larry had ever experienced in the ring. In 2003, tragedy hit home in the worst possible way. His son, Curt Hennig, better known to the world as Mr. Perfect, was found dead at just 44 years old. The cause was acute cocaine intoxication. Curt wasn't just Larry's son, he was also his pride. Seeing Curt carry on the family legacy in the wrestling world brought Larry so much joy. To lose him so suddenly and in such a heartbreaking way was something Larry never truly got over. After Curt's passing, Larry became more vocal about the dark side of wrestling. The pain, the pressure, the premature deaths that were becoming all too common. He spoke out after not just Curt's death, but also after the shocking story of Chris Benoit. You could hear the pain in his voice when he talked about it. And then, in the later years of his life, Larry had to face his own health battles. The same body that once made him a powerhouse in the ring was now starting to break down. Kidney failure slowly took its toll on him. He passed away on December 6, 2018, at the age of 82. Honestly, that's an overwhelming amount of pain for anyone to endure. But today, as we remember Larry Hennig, it's only right that we shift our focus to the good he brought into the world of wrestling. Let's take a moment to celebrate his achievements and hold on to the incredible memories he left behind. So let's dive in. In the early 1960s, a young and determined Larry Hennig stepped into the world of professional wrestling. He joined the American Wrestling Association, one of the top promotions of the time, and trained under the legendary Verne Gagne. Gagne believed in pure wrestling, a technical, clean style that focused more on skill than brute force. Larry followed that philosophy early in his career, learning the ropes and trying to make his mark. He did find some early success, including a short run as AWA Tag Team Champion alongside Duke Hoffman, but it wasn't long before Hennig started to hit roadblocks. Time and time again, Larry would find himself on the losing end of matches against tougher, more experienced wrestlers. These were brawlers, rough, gritty guys who didn't care much for the rulebook. It started to get to him. He began to question the scientific style that Gagne had taught him. Maybe it wasn't enough to out-wrestle someone cleanly. Maybe, just maybe, he needed to fight a little dirtier if he wanted to rise to the top. That shift in mindset became a key moment in his career. In the summer of 1963, Larry decided to leave the AWA and try his luck in the wild, unpredictable Texas wrestling scene. Down in Texas, things were different. The crowds were rowdier, the matches more brutal, and the style rougher. And that's exactly what Larry needed. He adapted quickly, changed his in-ring approach, and even won the Texas Heavyweight Championship. It was during this time that he crossed paths with a young Harley Race, another tough, talented wrestler looking to make a name for himself. The two hit it off almost instantly. They saw a bit of themselves in each other. Both were hungry, talented, and ready to break through. So when their Texas stint wrapped up, they decided to team up and take the wrestling world by storm. Together, they returned to Minneapolis and re-entered the AWA as a tag team. But this wasn't just any tag team. This was a duo with attitude. They called themselves Handsome Harley Race and Pretty Boy Larry Hennig. They were cocky, flashy, and didn't mind bending the rules to win. That combination of charisma and chaos made them instant stars. They weren't the kind of good guys the fans cheered for. They were villains, and they played the part perfectly. But love them or hate them, you couldn't take your eyes off them. They backed up their cocky attitudes with results, and soon enough, they climbed the tag team ranks. On January 30th, 1965, the young duo shocked the wrestling world when they defeated the legendary team of Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher to win the AWA World Tag Team Championship. At the time, they became the youngest tag champs ever in AWA history. Race and Hennig were on fire. They kept the titles close, defending them against some of the toughest teams in the business. Their feud with Bruiser and Crusher became one of the hottest rivalries in the AWA. For the next few years, the two teams clashed in one brutal match after another. During their time together, Race and Hennig won the tag titles a total of 3 times, each reign cementing their status as one of the most dominant duos in wrestling. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about their success. Verne Gagne, Hennig's former mentor, had become one of their most bitter rivals. Gagne couldn't stand how they had abandoned his clean-cut wrestling style, and he made it his mission to take them down. Over time, Gagne teamed up with several partners, including Crusher himself, to try and dethrone the villains he helped build. Eventually, he did. Just 6 months after their first reign began, Gagne and Crusher managed to beat Race and Hennig for the belts. But it didn't last long. Race and Hennig snatched the titles back on August 7th, 1965. The rivalry raged on, but the world was starting to take notice of Race and Hennig beyond the AWA. In 1966, they went on an international tour, hitting New Zealand, Japan, and Australia. Wrestling in front of new crowds, they took their act global and continued to dominate. In June, they became the first ever tag team champions in Australia's World Championship Wrestling promotion. Just before heading off to Japan, they dropped the AWA belts to Mark Lewin and Dominic DeNucci, closing out one chapter and opening another. When they returned to the US in late 1966, they had to start from the bottom again, but that didn't stop them. They fought their way back into title contention, and on January 6, 1967, they defeated Bruiser and Crusher once more in Chicago to become AWA Tag Team Champions for the third and final time. It looked like they were back on top for good. But then came the moment that changed everything. On November 1st, 1967, during a tag team match in Winnipeg, disaster struck. Hennig was in the middle of lifting Johnny Powers when another opponent crashed into him from the front. The impact caused Larry's knee to bend inwards in a way it wasn't meant to. He immediately knew something was wrong. He dropped Powers to the mat, but the damage was done. The cartilage and tendons in his knee were severely injured. Now, most wrestlers would have gone straight to the hospital, but not Larry Hennig. Stubborn and tough as ever, he refused to be treated in Winnipeg. Instead, Harley Race drove him over 500 miles back to Minneapolis. That long, painful ride said everything about Larry. He was a fighter, through and through. But no matter how tough he was, the injury marked the beginning of the end. That devastating knee injury cost them the titles. The AWA allowed Harley Race to pick a new partner to keep defending the belts. But the magic that Race and Hennig had was over. Their incredible run as a tag team, one filled with championships, chaos, and unforgettable moments, had come to a close. By the time March 1968 rolled around, Larry Hennig had fought his brutal knee injury and made a return to the AWA ring. Once again, he reunited with his old tag team partner and friend, Harley Race. Fans were excited to see the duo back together, but things weren't quite the same. Their time as a dominant tag team was winding down. Race, with big dreams of singles glory, eventually left for Kansas City to chase the National Wrestling Alliance title scene. That move marked the beginning of a new chapter for both men. Hennig, meanwhile, stayed the course and continued competing in the AWA. With Race gone, Hennig didn't sit idle. He found new partners to keep the tag team action going. First, he teamed up with Lars Anderson. Later, he aligned himself with a young, brash heel named Dusty Rhodes. This was long before Dusty became the beloved American dream of wrestling. Back then, he was still Dirty Dusty Rhodes, a rule-breaking villain with attitude, and teaming up with Hennig only made them more dangerous inside the ring. But Hennig wasn't just sticking to tag teams anymore. He was starting to focus more on singles matches too. In the early 1970s, he stepped up to challenge some of the biggest names in the game. Guys like Pedro Morales and Bruno Sammartino, both world champions at the time. While he never beat them for their titles, just sharing the ring with those legends showed the kind of respect Hennig had earned in the business. In late 1970, Hennig took his talents overseas to Japan, wrestling for the International Wrestling Enterprise as part of its Big Winter Series. Over there, he teamed up with Bob Windham, better known as Blackjack Mulligan. The duo made an immediate impact, defeating the popular Japanese team of Great Kusatsu and Thunder Sugiyama in a 2 out of 3 falls match to capture the IWA World Tag Team Championship. Their reign was short-lived though, as Kusatsu and Sugiyama won the titles back just a few weeks later. Still, for Hennig, that Japan trip was another big milestone in a career that had seen plenty of twists and turns. Back in the States, Hennig continued his battle with top stars, and between 1973 and 1974, he traveled to New York to once again challenge Bruno Sammartino for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. Sammartino was a living legend, and while Hennig came up short, his grit and determination left a mark on the New York wrestling fans. Then came a major shift in Hennig's wrestling identity, one that fans wouldn't forget. On August 10, 1974, during a TV taping in Minneapolis, Larry Hennig finally turned face. He wasn't the cocky, pretty boy anymore. He had grown out a big red beard and was now calling himself the Axe. The name fit. He wrestled with a hard-hitting, no-nonsense style that felt like an axe chopping down his opponents. The turning point came when he rushed to the aid of the High Flyers, Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne, who were being viciously attacked by Nick Bockwinkel, Ray Stevens, and their manager Bobby the Brain Heenan. That heroic save marked Hennig's full transformation into a fan favorite. From then on, he was the Axe, a man the fans could cheer for. During the same time, Hennig even made a brief appearance on the big screen. In the independent wrestling-themed movie The Wrestler, he wrestled none other than Verne Gagne in the opening match at the famous Cow Palace. It was a small role, but it added a fun little footnote to his long career. By 1976, Hennig had teamed up with powerhouse Joe LeDuc. Together, they brought some serious strength and toughness to the AWA tag team scene. Hennig had now reached veteran status, guiding younger wrestlers and still dishing out hard-hitting performances. And then, in one of the most poetic moments of his career, Hennig's past and future collided. In 1984, Harley Race, his old partner, returned to the AWA. But this time, he wasn't teaming with Larry. Instead, he was stepping into the ring to face Larry's son, Curt Hennig. Curt was just beginning to carve out his own name in wrestling, but he had big shoes to fill. Larry wasn't just watching from the sidelines either. After the match between Curt and Race ended, Larry entered the ring and confronted his former partner. It was a surreal moment, a passing of the torch mixed with old history, friendship, and pride. It told fans in a quiet but powerful way that Larry's time might be winding down, but Curt's journey was just beginning. In 1985, that passing of the torch became even more evident. Curt Hennig got his first major push, and it came alongside his father. The Hennigs, father and son, entered into a fierce rivalry with the powerhouse team of the Road Warriors. Known for their wild look and raw strength, the Road Warriors were one of the toughest teams in the business. But the Hennigs held their own and even found success outside the AWA. Together, they won the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team Championship, a fitting achievement for Larry as he shared one last big run with his son. By 1986, Larry Hennig decided it was finally time to retire for good, and that became the end of a legendary wrestling career. And that brings us to the end of today's video. We'd love to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update.